I never thought a vegetable garden could start a war. And yet, one ordinary Tuesday morning, that's exactly what it did. I was standing barefoot on my porch, coffee in hand, watching the sun creep over my backyard. Tomatoes climbing their cages, bell peppers heavy on the vine, neat wooden beds I built myself, board by board, after work and on weekends. Nothing fancy, just food. Then I opened my mailbox. Inside was a crisp white envelope, stamped with bold, official-looking letters. Notice of violation, Homeowners Association. I laughed out loud. Because here's the thing. I don't belong to an HOA. I never have. I bought my property 8 years ago, paid extra to make sure it was outside the HOA boundary. No dues, no committees, no strangers telling me what color my mailbox could be. So I figured it was a mistake. Until I read the letter. Your unauthorized vegetable garden is in violation of HOA landscaping standards. You have 10 days to remove all non-approved plantings or face daily fines of $100. I read it again and again. My stomach dropped. Shock turned into disbelief, then anger. They weren't asking, they weren't warning, they were ordering. I stood there staring at my backyard, at the rows of vegetables that fed my family, that helped offset rising grocery prices, that I worked on after long days just to clear my head. And some HOA I didn't even belong to had decided it was illegal. That night I pulled out my property paperwork. Deed, survey, title. Clear as day. No HOA membership, no covenants, no shared governance. So I emailed the number on the letter, politely at first. I explained the mistake, attached proof, and waited. Their response came the next morning, short, cold, and completely unhinged. Your property visually impacts the HOA community. Compliance is mandatory regardless of membership status. I felt my jaw tighten. Mandatory? On my land? That's when I realized this wasn't a mistake. This was entitlement. 3 days later, the first HOA representative showed up. No call, no warning. Just a man in khakis and a polo shirt standing at my fence, clipboard in hand, snapping photos of my garden like it was a crime scene. I stepped outside. "Can I help you?" I asked. He didn't even look embarrassed. "I'm here to document non-compliance," he said flatly. I told him, calmly, that he was trespassing. He smirked. "Your fence line doesn't change the fact that your garden lowers our property values." That sentence flipped a switch in me. Lowered property values, because of tomatoes. I reminded him again that I wasn't part of the HOA. He shrugged. "Doesn't matter. The board voted." Voted on my property. By people who don't own it. Over the next week, it escalated. More letters. Threats of liens, threats of legal action. One notice even claimed they could authorize removal if I didn't comply. That's when disbelief turned into rage, because now they weren't just bossy. They were threatening theft. I tried reasoning. I tried documenting. I even went to an HOA meeting, sat in the back while a room full of people stared at me like I was a problem that needed fixing. When it was my turn to speak, I laid out the facts. I own my land. I don't belong to the HOA. They have no authority. The board president leaned forward, smiled politely, and said, "We believe community standards extend beyond technical boundaries." That was the moment I knew. Logic wasn't going to work. They weren't confused. They were delusional. So I stopped trying to explain, and I started preparing to fight. I hired a real estate attorney. Best money I ever spent. Within 48 hours, a cease and desist letter was sent to the HOA. It outlined everything: their lack of jurisdiction, their harassment, their illegal threats, and the consequences if they continued. But the HOA didn't stop. They doubled down. One morning I woke up to the sound of voices. I looked outside. 2 HOA contractors were standing in my yard, with tools, getting ready to remove my garden. I felt pure white-hot anger. I ran outside, phone recording, told them to leave. They refused. That's when I called the police. And everything changed. When the officer arrived, I handed over my deed, my survey, the cease and desist letter. The HOA contractors went pale. The officer turned to them and said something I'll never forget. "You're trespassing. Leave now or you'll be cited." They left. Fast. 2 weeks later, the HOA was served. Not just with another letter, but with a lawsuit. Harassment, trespass, attempted property damage. They settled. Quietly, paid my legal fees, and issued a written apology. The garden stayed, and I expanded it. More beds, more vegetables. Because the real lesson wasn't about tomatoes. It was about standing your ground, about knowing your rights, and about how entitlement collapses the moment it meets someone who refuses to back down. So if you're dealing with an HOA or anyone who thinks they own what they don't, remember this: your land, your rules. And sometimes, the smallest garden can expose the biggest arrogance.